His pulse didn't just spike, it deafened her. Zalia froze, the empty auto syringe slipping from her six-fingered grasp to clatter against the sterile deck of Ward 4. The human captain on the examination table was supposed to be receiving a standard viral block. Instead, Elias Vance's eyes snapped open, the irises dilating until they were pools of black, mapping the microscopic fractures in the ceiling above. One wrong injection, one massive corporate conspiracy waiting in the wings, one human who suddenly sees the universe at the molecular level. She had just turned him into the galaxy's most advanced biological weapon. Truth is, it had started as a numbingly routine shift. The constant low thrum of the medical cruiser Aegis usually lulled Zalia into a half-sleep by this hour. Elias had walked in smelling of engine grease and cheap Starport coffee, flashing that crooked, entirely human smile as he complained about mandatory command physicals. She had laughed, a soft clicking sound deep in her throat, and reached for the pale blue vial without looking down. Except it hadn't been the blue one. It was the iridescent, highly unstable xylary apex stimulant, a compound so volatile it was supposed to be under triple lock in the lower vaults. Now Elias was gripping the edge of the biobed. The heavy alloy groaned, yielding to his fingers like warm wax. He didn't look sick. He looked terrifyingly present. "Zalia," he whispered. His voice was a low, resonant rumble that vibrated right through the soles of her boots. "I can hear the structural stress of the ship's port nacelle. I can taste the recycled air. It's saturated with copper, oxidized lithium, and—" He tilted his head, his focus entirely on her. "Fear. You smell like crushed violet leaves." She took a step closer, her scales flushing, a panicked, deep indigo. She reached out, her cool palm pressing flat against his bare chest, to track his vitals the old-fashioned way. His skin was burning. The heat radiated up her arm, an electric shock of sudden, terrifying intimacy. When experimental alien medicine meets human adaptability, the results are highly classified and highly contagious. She felt the frantic rhythm of it just by touching him, the sheer gravity of a human body rewriting its own genetic code in real time. Before she could speak, heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. Dr. Thorne, the chief medical officer, demanded absolute perfection, and an unauthorized genetic mutation definitely violated his strict protocols. Elias's head snapped toward the reinforced doors. 3 meters out. Left leg favors a bad knee. He's breathing fast." Zalia didn't think. She lunged for the security console and smashed the manual override. The heavy doors slid shut with a pneumatic hiss, the magnetic locks engaging a fraction of a second before Thorne's code beeped on the outer pad. "Rin!" Thorne's voice came muffled through the comms panel. "Why is Ward 4 on lockdown?" Elias slid off the table. He moved with a predatory grace, closing the distance between them until he was standing right over her. She had to tilt her head up, way up, to meet his dark, dilated eyes. The air between them suddenly felt suffocatingly thick. He wasn't just a patient anymore. His hyper-tuned senses were locked directly onto her, cataloging every micro-expression, every flutter of her pulse. "Tell him," Elias murmured, his breath brushing her crest. "It's the classified Valerius training protocol." Zalia swallowed hard, trying to ignore how completely he eclipsed her space. "Sir," she called out, her voice remarkably steady. "Command-level privacy lock. Captain Vance is undergoing the classified military stress simulation. We need 10 more minutes." A long pause hung from the other side. 10 minutes, Medic Rin. Then I'm keying the master unlock." The comms went dead. Zalia leaned back against the console, her chest heaving. Elias raised a hand, his fingers trembling slightly with newfound power, and gently traced the line of her jaw. She was supposed to give him a standard vaccine. Instead, she accidentally triggered the next step in human evolution. "We have 10 minutes," he said softly, staring at her as if he could see the individual atoms of her skin, "to figure out how to hide a miracle." 10 minutes. It turned out 10 minutes was a lifetime when your central nervous system was suddenly wired to the cosmos. Elias didn't just walk out of Ward 4 after Dr. Thorne finally retreated down the corridor. He navigated the ship by the frequency of its vibrations, his hand instinctively catching Zalia's wrist. His grip was entirely different now, calibrated, impossibly gentle, as if he knew the exact pressure required to hold her without bruising her delicate scales. "Down," he muttered, pulling her toward the lower deck lifts. "Something is wrong with the air down there. It tastes like synthetic phosphorus. Stagnant." The primary pharmaceutical vaults were strictly off limits, sealed behind biometric scanners. Elias simply pressed his bare palm against the heavy durasteel door. He felt the tumblers, heard the microscopic clicks of the magnetic locks, and physically twisted the manual release dial with a sickening crunch of tearing metal. Inside, the cold storage hummed. Zalia shivered, her breath pluming in the frigid air. But Elias moved like a man possessed. He walked straight past the racks of stabilized painkillers, stopping at the pallets designated for the outer colony drops. He picked up a sealed nutrient packet. To Zalia, it looked completely normal. Elias closed his eyes, inhaling deeply, and ran his thumb over the microseams. "Soul Corp Synthetics," he whispered. His jaw clenched tight. They didn't just mislabel the shipments. Zalia, they laced the colony supplies with a molecular decay agent. "I can smell the bonding agents. It's designed to look like a localized plague." Corporate espionage hidden behind bureaucratic oversight. Zalia's chest tightened. She reached out, her fingers wrapping around his forearm. His muscles were corded tight, buzzing with excess energy. "We have to tell Vex. But Elias, the moment we walk into that command briefing, they'll scan you. They'll know what I did." He turned, the dim blue light of the vault catching the sharp new angles of his face. He didn't hesitate. He stepped into her space, his chest brushing hers, and looked down. "Then we give them the truth, all of it." The command briefing with Director Vex was a blur of shouting, drawn sidearms, and sudden absolute quiet. Zalia stood at attention, her heart hammering against her ribs, while Elias dumped the contaminated colony supplies onto the heavy glass table. He didn't just present the physical evidence of the sabotage, he dismantled a sealed vial with his bare hands, citing the chemical breakdown of the Soul Corp poison with terrifying, inhuman accuracy. When Vex demanded to know how a human captain suddenly possessed the sensory processing of an apex predator, Zalia stepped forward. She confessed. The wrong vial, the xylary stimulant. Silence stretched across the room. Vex looked from the ruined Soul Corp evidence to Elias, then down to Zalia. Interspecies synergy, it turned out, was highly profitable when it saved a colony from mass extinction. The command board didn't court-martial them. They verified the corporate sabotage data within the hour. By nightfall, once they had officially sanctioned the accidental experiment, slapping classified command promotions onto both their files. They were reassigned immediately. The research vessel Nightingale was waiting in the docking bay. Elias stood at the helm of their new ship, the star field stretching out before them. Zalia stood beside him, punching in the transfer orders. He reached over, his hand covering hers on the console. The heat of his skin was a steady, grounding anchor against the vast cold of space. "Ready?" he asked, his voice a low vibration that settled deep in her chest. Zalia looked up at him, reading the quiet pull in his dark eyes. She didn't just see a captain anymore. She saw the man she accidentally broke and the marvel he became. "Engage," she said. Elias threw the lever, and the Nightingale tore a hole through the dark, jumping into hyperspace,